Okay, well I'll tell you in half an hour everything I know about archaeological geophysics, which is longer than I get on Time Team. For a start, we no longer talk about geophysics, we talk about geophys. But we'll come back to that later. What I want to do is talk a bit about my view of Time Team from down under. My own peculiar view of Time Team. And it's, well, let's see what you make of it. It's actually 20 years, as you all know. Some of you may not have been born then, when we first hit the screens. And it's fair to say at that time there was quite a dramatic change in archaeology in the UK. The subject actually became sexy, and especially in television terms. And one programme in particular, Time Team, what else, had a major impact, not only on the viewer, but on the viewer's perception of archaeology. And archaeologists, overnight, sort of found themselves in the limelight. And one individual in particular, highlighted by the Daily Telegraph no less, well, he was highlighted as one of the nicest people on television. And he became a role model overnight. And he's instantly recognisable. No, it's not Francis. Yeah. It is this sexy... He was actually voted #1, the sexiest person on Time Team by a poll of fans, going back about 10 years. It says a lot about the bloody fans that watch
Well, you photoshopped that.
You keep quiet. In that vote, the Time Team fans, I actually got 1 vote. Which I thought, well, that's not bad for geophysics. We know our place, as this slide demonstrates from the new market. Fill the front of the pantomime horse, me the rear, collecting the proverbial in the yellow bucket. So I was quite pleased getting 1 vote though. Till I discovered that the bloody Time Team Disco had got 2 votes in that poll. But that's geophysics on Time Team for you. Always coming in. Well, I won't say the expletive because we're before the 9 o'clock threshold. So, Time Team. What's it all about? Basically, as you all know, it's archaeologists, well, so-called archaeologists, faced with a challenging mission. 3 days to go find a site, do geophysics on it, excavate it, record it, backfill it, and tell the public about it. And that is the real important part. And by the public, it's not just archaeologists. In fact, its aim is not at archaeologists. Its aim was initially at people that had no interest in archaeology whatsoever, but wanted to see incredibly attractive people doing incredibly bright things on telly. How they ended up with us, God only knows. So we started with a TV presenter, so-called academic, so-called female archaeologist. This guy in the middle, who we so depend upon. God help us. Of recent years, this man we've also come to depend on. Still, at least he still has hopes. There were others that were part of the original team. The sadly remembered Robin Bush on the left, person we'd rather forget in the middle. And, well, what more can I say? But it's not just those main players, there's all the people below. Environmentalists, diggers, etc., etc., until we get to the most important at the end. And of course, and so on.
Oh, Raksha.
I had several thoughts for the title of this relating to Jimmy, but it's perhaps surprising that when the program started, a major component of the early series, and still to this day, is geophysics. And I think it's fair to say that despite the pretense of Phil and Raksha and others, geophysical techniques have actually become a key to the success of many of the programs. So we're using a variety of techniques to tell people where to go and dig. And that's where the fun and games start. Well, I'll come back to that. I think it's fair to say that as a result of Time Team, geophysics has now achieved a high public profile. I mean, how many people can say they've appeared on the front cover of a magazine? Okay, it's new electronics, but you know. It's exciting stuff. It's changed people's perceptions. Now, how many of you here have been to your local Lush shop recently? Quite exciting until you look at the price. It says oh, and that is not fake. But people's perceptions of geophysics have been raised quite dramatically. Well, I think it's fair to say that Time Team has been responsible to a large extent for the popularisation of the subject. As I said at the start, we've actually now coined our own language. We don't talk about anomalies anymore, we talk about blobs. Big blobs, little blobs, whatever, doesn't matter. And we don't talk of geophysics, we talk of geophys. And that esteemed professor of archaeology at Bournemouth, whose name I forget at the moment, I think he's worked at Stonehenge. Who am I thinking of?
Tim Darwin.
Oh, how could I forget? He actually recommended that geophys was actually a new word in the Oxford English Dictionary. Shows what exciting reading habits he has. So why is geophysics such an important part of Time Team? One, we're cheap. Two, we get good results. And our first good results were at Athelney back in 1993, when this image plotted out on a dot matrix printer in the back of our archaeology detector van. The famous site of Athelney, a really clear plan of the monastic remains, the church. I'm trusting you can all see those, which is a shame because English Heritage couldn't. They surveyed it 6 years before us and found absolutely nothing. So that's quite good from our point of view. The reason was when they carried out the survey, it was a bone dry summer. When we did the survey, it was in spring and the wet ground was starting to dry out, but it was still wet enough to contrast with the stone wall foundations of the building. And so we got this particularly clear picture. And we even wowed Tony Robinson, which, you know, everyone to their own. But it worked for us because we're still there 20 years later. what geophysics does is it gives us instant results, and then we can go and dig and test those results, get dating evidence, find artifacts, and for the fun part of it, prove or disprove the geophysics. I trust you all know that Nick never wears clothes on site, but being as we're before the 9 o'clock threshold. So, we'll use a range of techniques. Here, magnetic survey, the blob on the left, kiln, confirmed by the XY traces. We do radar transect over it. We start excavating, put the camera down, and lo and behold, an intact tile kiln, medieval date. All within less than 2 hours. Now, if that's not exciting in archaeology, you know, and to have cameras there viewing people going through those processes and recording that, then for me that's better than doing oil exploration or whatever. I'd probably get paid a lot more money. And when you get sort of results like that, and these are all examples that were done in less than 3 days. Resistance survey, incredibly clear results, and we choose where to target, and in that instance we come down on exactly what Tim Taylor wants. So he buys the beer that night. I'll maybe come back to that slide in a minute. That site. Now this slide unfortunately has gone slightly wrong, and that messes up my story totally. But that's the point I forgot. But this was an early survey that we did on Time Team, and we just surveyed that bit on a playing field, nothing visible, and we were looking for a Roman road and ditches and settlement. After 3 20-metre squares, we got those results, so we declared to 3 million viewers. We got the ditch system turning through right angles. We then did the next 3 squares and sat back. And despite Nick Aston taunts that this was an apsidal building, we didn't really know where the penalty spot fitted in, or the actual goal mouth. That was slightly embarrassing, only slightly. But it's an interesting exercise now. It shows you the limitation of doing a small sample survey and drawing conclusions and making interpretations before you've collected enough data. And so, you know, it's not all negative. So what do we do on Time Team with geophysics? We're not there to teach the world heavy science. We're there to use tried and tested techniques to actually find archaeology and do it in as quick a time as possible. Now, we have done dowsing, or shall I rephrase that, dowsing has been done on Time Team on 3 or 4 occasions. They probably got a higher fee than we did, and they got about as good a results as Jimmy normally gets with his radar. I have an open mind with regards dowsing, as to whether it works or not. Of course it doesn't, it's a load of bollocks. I'm talking of bollocks. No, I should rephrase that. It's one of these fisherman's tales, you know, with his hands, but the fact he's wearing a Newcastle United shirt, you don't trust him. And who trusts men in shorts like that? The techniques we use, resistance. Right, this is where you can fall asleep. This is a 2-minute guide to resistance. This is me on the Queen's lawn, as opposed to Phil on the Queen's mound. some of you know the history of that. Right, so here's Buckingham Palace, a Roman villa, a monastic site, conveniently made of large chunks of stone with ditches round the outside. And that was a long time ago. Last week, it's fallen down. You've got topsoil covering everything, you've got bits of stone, footings and ditches. You've got Jimmy walking up and down with his resistance kit, and what does he get? As a rule of thumb, low resistance responses over ditches because they're waterlogged, high resistance responses over wall foundations. So we plot the high resistances, we plot the low, we plot the buildings, we plot the ditches, and hunky-dory, you end up with pictures like this. On the top left is the raw data. Roman Villa at Turkding. There we've put some filtering in to try to highlight the walls and so on. There you're trying to get a sort of 3D image. And I think it's fair to say when the results are that clear, you know, even Raksha can see what's there. And if she can't, we do these sort of 3D reconstructions for her.
Thanks.
Because I'm not at the end of this.
Yeah, is that a Roman villa? Just checking.
How many cans of this beer have I got? But, so that was resistance survey. Tomorrow on site, if anybody's still around, I've got all the gear, and the plan is, for those that want to see it, I'm happy to show people the kit and so on. And maybe be a bit less flippant, but there's no guarantee of it. Those who can't, oh no, I won't go into that. Magnetometry. That's what we use for most of our survey work, both on Time Team and outside of Time Team. Detecting magnetic changes. Again, these are the early machines. Single instruments, then we had two instruments, pairs of sensors, then a whole series of sensors attached to GPS, and then doing specific readings, the coil system. So again, a long time ago, I've seen one of those today somewhere. All the different activity, buried by topsoil, and you'll get differing responses. Very characteristic, smooth responses over ditches and pits. What this diagram doesn't show is if you've got iron spikes, by contrast you get very sharp, clearly defined responses. Where you've got hard kilns and so on, you'll get strong, much stronger responses than is shown on this sort of picture. And the shape of the anomalies gives you a clue as to what's actually there. And so you collect the magnetic data in the same way as the resistance, and you end up with plots like that. This was a Romano British site up in Northumbria, and a street system with a whole series of workshops alongside the street, and we excavated this blob here and got a very nice small kiln, which even impressed the Prime Minister at the time, Mr. Blair, who came and visited Phil Harding on site. He didn't comment on the geophysics. Third technique, and this is really being pioneered by my esteemed colleague, who can't be with us tonight, thank God, Jimmy. Jimmy's a hard geophysicist who's got into archaeology and has been developing a lot of the work we do on Time Team. And some of these are his jokes, so I won't play them into mine. Spelt operator. So that's how it works. Send energy into the ground, it hits different surfaces, it comes back, the time it takes gives you an idea of the depth. And if you've got things like caskets and so on, you can actually have a guess from the shape of the reflection and the depth and so on what you might be looking at. the past slide would have, and I'm not being derogatory, been the sort of level at which we talk about things for most time team viewers. If we started getting into anything like this, talking about radargrams, reflections, transmitters, receivers, rubber banding, all things like that, then the viewers would turn off overnight and I'd be with them. But basically, the big advantage of the GPR is that unlike the mag and res where you get just plan information, you get depth information. And if you take a series of slices, vertical slices through the ground, think of them as slices of bread. And so each slice of bread is a line of data. You stack them all together, as in a loaf, and so you get a big block of data, and these are all the reflections going down, so the top of the earth and seeing different reflections in the ground. You expand the survey until the block's complete. You then take your loaf of bread and you start to slice it horizontally instead of vertically, and you define these time slices. They can be 5 centimetres thick, 10 centimetres thick, or whatever, going down through the depths. And so when we look at time slices, we'll look at near surface ones just below the turf and get deeper into the ground, and we start to get that 3D effect. And so you can animate that. This is Binchester, some mausolea we've found. So that is going through the time slices. And here we're selecting near surface at a greater depth, and on the final one, a sort of composite view. Now this is where we get problems with people on time team, in that we'll produce a plot like that. We'll produce a plot like that, and when people are digging at this depth, they'll say, well, where are those walls? And we'll say to them, well, they're actually 40 centimetres lower. And that's a visual thing that's difficult to portray these responses on a flat piece of paper. So the advantages of radar, if we look back to the plot that showed the ploughing through the villa at Dinnington, we look at that area where you can't see much on the resistance because you've got those mosaic floors, and the mosaic floors look identical to the walls. So it's only when you use the radar you can actually start to see the wall lines within the rooms, and we all saw the end results. So again, that's just cycling through time slices. And then one of our most famous surveys, again at Windsor Castle, the magnetic results in the top right, total mess. This is actually a corridor, tunnel that goes below ground from the kitchens across the lawn to the Queen's private quarters. It's still used to this day. Having done the magnetic survey and the resistance survey, we thought, well, waste of time, so much modern disturbance. But then we did the radar, and you can see this modern block of concrete there. You can see that service tunnel, you can see some other modern things, but then the critical thing was part of the round table, which was confirmed live on TV. And even the Queen was impressed when she heard about that. So more ground truthing, the clarity of the results in the geophysics, identifying the clear wall lines at differing angles and so on, and the fact that probably on resistance you wouldn't see them so clearly. Again, this is only one time slice, but you can start to see the detail of the walls, etc. So where do we go beyond Jimmy walking up and down with radar? The answer is I don't know. Come on. We take this block of data, and what we try to do, I'll show people that tomorrow. I don't think the computer's powerful enough to actually go through a 3D swinging model. But that's one of the things we're doing. The other thing is to mechanise things, and instead of having one antenna, in this instance we've got 16 antenna, and we put it on a cart, and one slight drawback. That's the cost of Jimmy. So what we've done is we've persuaded Marla, the Swedish group, to do a cut down version, and instead of 16 antenna, this has got 8. And we tow it to one of the JCB Workmaxes. Not that I'm advertising, but JCB Workmaxes are really good. Marla kit is even better. So that's got 8 antenna, and instead of Jimmy walking up and down just taking one vertical slice, he's taking 8 slices at 8 centimetre intervals. So the amount of information, the resolution you can get is phenomenal. It's all tracked by robotic theodolite, and that's tied in by GPS. You could put the GPS onto it, but the GPS signal often drops out because you're driving across the field so fast. And this was Canetio, where we did the magnetic survey of the whole Roman town in 3 days, several hectares there. The red is what they did with GPR in 2 hours. And you can see the detail, that's just one time slice. There's so much data there, I can't actually do an animation of it. But yeah, quite impressive if you've got 250,000. So I think it's fair to say geophysics still plays a large role in the programmes. I mean, we've actually been accused of dumbing down the science. I mean, I think that's a load of bollocks. It's serious scientific research that we do. We're pushing boundaries. However, it was interesting. In the first few years that Time Team came out, there was lots of discussion in the media, in archaeology, and people just watching the programme. And there was one review in New Scientist which I thought was quite interesting, and it sort of sums up the success of Time Team. It's easier for you to read than me talk. Yeah, total blank. But it doesn't matter. We've gone through the process. The viewer's seen how archaeology is carried out. One of the best programmes we did was a site where we found absolutely nothing. And another one was where, I choose my words carefully, we may have been set up and people planted a whole series of finds, archaeological features, monuments on the ground, a sort of archaeological theme park. No, it wasn't here. And yeah, I think all of us who do Time Team still enjoy it. The fact we get this instant feedback from the geophysics, the fact we get instant criticism, it's all good fun, it's all good banter. And the beauty is to actually work alongside your colleagues, because normally we'll go in, do a survey on our own, we'll present our results, and the only time we get to hear anything is if we've got it wrong. And on Time Team, if you get it wrong, you get to hear about it quite quickly. But it's been an experience I certainly, not forget. I mean, I'm not actually allowed to advertise on being part of Channel 4, but I can thoroughly recommend GTAC computers. Waterlog computers, brilliant, absolutely fantastic. And if you need to do GPS surveys, nothing beats Trimble. I've already mentioned JCB, who else do I need to mention?
Land Rover.
Land Rover.
Bombardier.
Bombardier.
Oh!
And see, we get to do things that we never dreamt we'd do. It's one of the joys of Time Team.
Yay!
That's the first 9 o'clock. You haven't seen that yet. I trust the camera's not running for that.
No.
That's my experience on Time Team.
No.
I hope you've enjoyed it.
Great stuff, thank you.